If you take the gospel message, it is so unique, contrast it with any other worldview. No worldview even comes close. If you were to talk to a Hindu or a Muslim or a Buddhist, they will all have one thing in common, that the pathway to nirvana or the pathway to moksha, which is release, is through your own effort to build your righteousness up. For the Hindu, it is karma, the karmic law has to work out. If you ask any Muslim, how do you attain paradise? His answer, if he is an honest Muslim and a truthful Muslim, will say to you, your good deeds will have to outweigh your bad deeds, and your deeds will be made on that final judgment day. By goodness, you will have to outweigh all of the badness in your life. And you ask a Christian, how do you know you're going to go to heaven? And the answer is very simple. It is by the grace and the mercy of God, not by any righteousness of my own. What a difference, stark difference. And I say to you, the biggest mistake we often make in life, in the task to which God has called us, is to assume that we really can't do very much, that we can't do it. You know, God has used children, God has used little ones to look into the eyes of the parent and ask a question and turn the life of that parent around. He has used ordinary people. I think it was Charles Wesley who was led to Christ by the maid in the household. This is the great writer of hymns and the great writer of music. If I'm not mistaken, I think that's the way it actually happened with Charles Wesley. What I'm saying to you is, don't underestimate what God can do through you. Don't underestimate that. It's not because who you are, but because of how He has wired you and how you are not replicable. Tory Johnson, one of the founders of Youth for Christ, tells the story that he'd been invited to speak at a high school and he couldn't go, so he called Billy Graham and said, will you go for me? And Billy said, okay. So he phoned the school and said, I can't come, but I'm sending a young evangelist by the name of Billy Graham. They said, we don't know who he is. We don't want him. If you're not coming, we're going to cancel. And Tory Johnson said, please have him. You will not regret it. They said, no, we don't know him. Tory said, have him. So they had him. And Billy came back and Tory called him and said, how did it go? He said, not very well, Tory. But one person did respond to the gospel message I gave. Said, did you write down his name so you can pray for him? He said, yes. He said, what's his name? His name was Warren Wiersbe. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? An ordinary person who was not known goes and preaches as a replacement, and the hosts are not too delighted about having him. And one man by the name of Warren Wiersbe gives his life to the Lord, who later on became the pastor at Moody Church and one of the great expositors in recent memory. Don't underestimate what God can do through you. You are an individual. That comes from the Latin, which means you are indivisible. You cannot be broken up or fragmented or reconstituted. You are an individual of unique capacity. God can use you, maybe with a statement, maybe with a word, maybe with a gift, and only heaven will reveal ultimately how God has used some of the unsung heroes of our time because they were totally submitted to Him. You see, in preaching, in writing, and so many public displays, the ego can get in the way. In prayer, you're alone with God. There is no showing off.